Her voice echoed off marble. You're just a guest here, but my name holds every key. That phrase ricocheted through the foyer like a verdict. Ava's footsteps slammed away. The door snapped shut. Instantly, the air grew colder. I stood, alone, in the silence. If this felt like your story, or the one you're still living, don't scroll past. I'm here. Tell me where you're watching from. My fingers drifted across the brass plate mounted by the threshold. Lane residence. The metal felt cooler than the memory I carried. I closed my eyes. I remembered carrying little Ava across this same threshold, her laughter bubbling, head tipped back, tiny arms gripping my shoulders. I whispered then, "Welcome to home, sweetheart." Now, her glare felt like a sentence. Act 1, complete the fracture. Ava's walkout, the unresolved image of departure, the silence pressed down. I inhaled deliberately, resolve ignited, quiet but fierce. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered until they clicked open the messages. I typed, "Need to draft new terms today." Sent it to Harold Cho. His number howled once, then went quiet. Objectivity, action. I slid the phone back into the purse. That same purse that's been my anchor. My archive of receipts and old court notices. Its zipper stuck on the left side. I remembered its stubborn detail. Act 2. I pivot back to power. I turned slowly to face the empty hall. No echoes bounced. No things waited. Just space, vast and owned. Lines of light sliced across the marble, painting wide arcs, ownership reawakening through sunlight and resolve. I stepped forward toward the center of the foyer. Each tile underfoot a testament to every challenge I silently lived through. Ownership isn't loud, it suffocates whispers. I whispered, "Let's remind her whose home this is." A final quiet strike. Paper doesn't scream, it waits flat, silent, and lethal, until the date in the corner demands attention. I stared at the trust clause, highlighted in red. Final, cold. It sat in the middle of my study table like it had been waiting for me. To stop pretending this could all resolve with a hug and a Sunday roast. The silence in the room wasn't peaceful. It was expectant. A single chime popped on my screen. Calendar reminder, trust clause, reevaluation, 10 days. 10 days to prove I wasn't bluffing. 10 days to act like the woman my husband once trusted with everything. I moved the teacup aside. It had gone cold. I unfolded the title packet. Not gently. The pages spread like wings sharp, legal, unavoidable. On page 5, my signature gleamed in blue ink. Margaret Lane. Not Ava's name. Not anyone else. Still mine. Still mine. A flash burned through the back of my mind. Gerald, in his slippers, standing over this very table, warning me. Revisited every few years. Maggie, don't let it gather dust. Dust attracts snakes. His voice, rough with love, still echoed truer than my own daughter's scream. Act 1, complete betrayal set in stone. Memory whispering warnings. The study air thickened. The scent of wood polish and old paper climbed my nose. My phone buzzed, again, this time with Ava's voicemail. Mom, respond by Friday, please. There was a hesitation in her tone, not softness, uncertainty, like she'd realized I wasn't bending like I used to. I tapped out to reply. Busy. We'll call after review. Send. No emoji. No softness. That was the old me, the one who left rooms quietly to avoid upsetting anyone. Not this woman, not this moment. I picked up the landline. Yes, I still used one, and dialed Harold, chose direct extension. He answered like he already knew. Harold, can we meet at noon? A beat. Then, I'll clear the rest of my day. Nodded, though he couldn't see it. The study was still. I let myself stand there for a full minute, staring at the document, not reading it, just feeling it. A different kind of prayer. Act 2. Power shift underway. Tools in hand. I reached for my fountain pen, the same one Gerald gifted me for our 20th anniversary, silver, with a floral etching near the nib. It had always bled too heavily on cheap paper. This page, it absorbed every letter like it meant it. I didn't sign anything, not yet, but I clicked the pen. A promise, a warning, a line drawn before battle. The purse sat on the adjacent chair, that stubborn zipper still slightly ajar, like it knew I wasn't done. Act 3, awakening blooms, clock ticking. In the quiet, I whispered, time is not on her side. When you've lived through betrayal, gates don't make you feel safe. They just mark where the silence starts. I stood at mine, arms crossed, watching Harold Cho pull up the gravel drive. The midday sun was slanting hard across the estate wall, casting long shadows that didn't move. He stepped out in gray linen, always the quiet kind of sharp. He carried no briefcase, just a manila folder and that tired look attorneys get when families turn into war zones. Margaret, he nodded. We didn't shake hands. We didn't need to. I pointed toward the small gatehouse tucked beside the magnolia tree, where Gerald used to keep spare boots and cigars. It smelled like forgotten decisions. Inside, dust floated in the stillness. I laid out the deed and the covenant. Harold didn't sit. He flipped through the documents like they'd already been memorized. Ava's pushing, he asked without looking up. I didn't nod. I didn't speak, just handed him the post-it I'd stuck on the trust clause. Deadline, 10 days. Harold read it, paused. Life tenancy still stands. You retain full discretionary control. She's not a co-owner, Margaret. She's a guest with conditions. His words didn't soothe. They confirmed. I looked past him through the small gatehouse window. Ava once danced there in rain boots, spinning with a plastic crown. Now, she was the storm. Can I notify her now? I asked, my voice level. He gave a slow nod. You can, but it must be formal. Certify today. He pulled a pre-printed notice from his folder. This outlines amended covenant terms. She'll receive it by morning. I glanced at the paper. Terms I'd help write, words Ava would read and either obey or challenge. Harold slid the notice toward me. My pen, the floral one Gerald gave me, lay between us like a blade. My hand hovered. I remembered the first time I signed mortgage papers on this land. Pregnant, nervous, hopeful. Now I signed something harder. Not to buy space, but to guard it. The signature came fast, sharp. One stroke through sentiment. Harold slipped the paper back into its envelope. No rescinding after this, he said softly. I don't want to. Outside, we heard the courier truck rumble into the drive. Harold stepped out, waved, handed off the sealed delivery. I stayed inside, watched from the slatted window as the truck reversed, gravel crunching like old bones. The envelope vanished down the road, small but irreversible. Inside the gatehouse, everything went quiet. The magnolia leaves rustled once and fell still, and I whispered, just to myself, she'll see this coming. Ava once called me for help signing her lease. Now she was opening certified mail from me at her office, surrounded by peers she once wanted to impress me with. The irony wasn't poetic, it was surgical. She called, but I didn't answer. I imagined her pulse, thudding under her collarbone, imagined the weight of that envelope in her hands like a verdict she never saw coming. Meanwhile, I was in the sunroom, drafting the covenant's additions. Clause 14, respect training required weekly. Clause 18, guest privileges, subject to renewal. Clause 22, monthly occupancy contribution required. I typed each word like I was writing a lullaby for the home I was done apologizing for. I printed the draft on ivory linen paper. Gerald's old printer coughed before every sheet, as if clearing its throat for a final performance. Dinner that night was baked halibut, lemon zest, and silence. At precisely 7:08 p.m., the door creaked open. Ava's silhouette held still for one breath, then she stepped inside. The certified envelope was gripped in her right hand. Her left hand trembled, barely. She didn't say hello. She didn't need to. I stood in the foyer, not the kitchen, not the living room, the same space where I once cradled her home from the hospital. Now, I held something else. The revised covenant, folded once, clean. I offered it out like a torch. Sign or vacate. Ava blinked fast. Her mouth parted, then she looked down, avoiding eye contact the way children do before a punishment they think might still be undone. You can't do this to your child, she whispered. Her voice cracked, but mine didn't. I can protect my home. There was no thunderclap, no dramatic gasp. Just the sound of our history unraveling one clause at a time. She stepped forward, took the document with stiff fingers, read it top to bottom. Her chest rose, sharp and shallow. The pen, that same fountain pen, waited on the credenza beside her. She reached for it. BAFTA highs, filled but didn't spill. Not yet. She clenched the pen like it bit her. Then she flung it. It clattered across the marble floor like a shot no one fired, and she was gone. Door slammed. Same way as before. Only, now, the air didn't feel colder. It felt claimed. I stood still. The halibut on the stove burned, but I didn't move. Silence filled the foyer, thick and echoless. I could have wept. I dean single quotes too. Instead, I stepped toward the pen. Its silver casing caught the chandelier light, glinting like a coin you toss for luck or surrender. I bent down, picked it up, held it to my heart like a keepsake, and whispered, "Steady this time, then I'll enforce it." The house echoed differently when you were the one who caused the silence. I walked barefoot through the hall, every step trailing soft echoes across the old hardwood. Ava's voice didn't haunt the air. It ducked around corners, waiting to strike or apologize, or neither. My hand brushed the molding. Gerald restored himself, back when ownership was about pride and not defense. In the drawing room, sunlight spilled across the piano bench. I paused there. A photo of our last Christmas together sat on the mantel. Ava, Gerald, me, and Dana. Dana, her fiancé, with that tight jaw and rehearsed charm that always felt like something you buy from a department store and return a week later. I picked up the frame. His hand was on Ava's waist in the photo, just firm enough to look loving, just staged enough to unsettle me. I'd ignored it back then. I don't ignore things now. I slipped the photo from the frame, pulled the rest of the stack behind it. One by one, every image with Dana, birthday brunch, summer barbecue, even the one at the vineyard. I slid them into a drawer lined with old receipts and sealed it. Photos lie, paper doesn't. Back in the study, the air was thick with printer heat and something sharper, clarity. I sat down and reopened the Covenant edits. Gerald's floral pen rested on the edge of the desk, cap off, ink dry. I added 3 new lines beneath Clause 22. Clause 23, enforcement fee for non-compliance. Clause 24, legal warning to unauthorized partners. Clause 25, no third-party arbitration allowed. Midnight amendments, not out of spite, out of precedent. I printed the final version and stamped it in red. Final. The stamp thudded like a gavel. Quiet, absolute. A second envelope waited. This one wasn't for Ava. I addressed it to Dana Roth. Certified, overnight. Let him read what I had the grace not to say in person. The calendar pinged again. Deadline, 10 days. I didn't jump. I leaned back in Gerald's chair. The leather cracked faintly beneath me. Ava would feel this, Dana would read this, and I would outlast it. My eyes drifted up to the bookshelf. A childhood drawing of Ava still hung there. Crayon chaos, home written backwards. A full circle lie. I sat still. Not tired, not triumphant. Just. Calibrated. The grandfather clock in the hallway began to chime. Each note rang sharp, cutting through the study like a countdown only I could hear. I didn't get up. I'd whispered to no one. No more free passes. You don't leave a sword on someone's pillow unless you expect them to use it or be changed by holding it. At dawn, I crept into Ava's room and placed the heirloom key on her pillow. Silver, unsigned, shaped like the old wine cellar lock Gerald once polished like it was sacred. Tied to it was a single note. First test at dawn. No signature, no instructions, just an invitation she didn't yet know how to decline. I closed the door and waited. Silence filled the morning, like smoke, thick, scentless, unavoidable. An hour passed. I heard the rustle of sheets, the soft clink of metal against ceramic. She'd found it. Then, her hesitant steps down the hallway. Not bold, not defiant, just searching. I stayed invisible. The study door creaked. A click, then quiet. She had locked herself inside. My feet carried me to the door unhurried. Knocked once. Tea, I said. For the neighbors. 10 sharp, no more, no less. That was the first test. Not paperwork, not lawsuits. Hosting. Grace under structure, hospitality under pressure. End legacy. Under scrutiny. I returned to the kitchen and left her to prepare. The tea cabinet squeaked open. The guest list folder thudded on the dining table. Through the window, I could see her silhouette pacing too fast, too scattered. The china she picked didn't match. The scones were store-bought. And the mint in the tea was far too bitter at 10:03. The doorbell rang. Mrs. Kittredge, the Walters couple, and Marla Pearson filed in, polite smiles masking curiosity. Ava greeted them with an awkward bow, offering lemon squares that weren't hers. From the second floor, I watched from the library window. Arms crossed, no interference. Only observation. She forgot napkins. Fumbled small talk. Mrs. Kittredge asked, about the legacy trust. Ava blinked, paused. Said, that's not my lane. Wrong answer. 10 minutes later, the teapot clanked hard against the tray. Too hot, too full. The liquid splashed a bloom across her sleeve. But she didn't cry, she didn't run, she poured again. Each guest, confused but courteous, finished their tea. Polite, but unenchanted. They left with thank yous that felt more like condolences. When the last heel tapped down the front steps, I stepped from the shadows and down the stairs. I didn't rush, I didn't hover. I entered the room she'd just cleaned in a daze. The tray sat crooked. One lemon square remained. She turned when she heard me, back straighter than before, not proud, but less hollow. Her eyes didn't beg. They waited. I reached down, lifted the empty teacup beside her. It was too light to hold history. Still, I said, you passed the first trial. Sometimes apologies bloom with thorns. Ava stood at the kitchen threshold, bouquet in hand, pale tulips, and one bruised peony, like even the florist had sensed it wasn't peace she was offering. Just pause. She held it like a schoolgirl who'd forgotten her lines. For earlier, she mumbled. I took the flowers, placed them in the tall ceramic vase Gerald brought back from Spain, the one that had cracked during our last move, then glued, imperfectly, by my own hand. The silence between us said more than any card. I turned back to the stove, and the phone rang. Harold's extension. I knew by the rhythm of the buzz. Fast, clipped, necessary. I answered. His voice was tight. There's a lien. What kind of lien? Tax-related from '03. On your secondary parcel, never recorded in the refile. It could contest the covenant. The room narrowed. Tulips blurred at the edge of my sight. Harold kept talking, something about clerical error, revalidation paths, preliminary injunction, but I heard none of it. A lie. 20 years old, had risen through the floorboards, like mold no bleach could reach. Ava watched me, watched my fingers stiffen around the counter's edge, watched the room change shape without moving an inch. I want you on this tonight, I said to Harold, whatever it takes. Yes, Margaret. I ended the call and placed the receiver back with unnatural care. The bouquet stared back at me, soft, pointless. That sounded serious, Ava said. I didn't answer. She stepped closer, her voice lowering. Is it something I did? For a beat, I almost pitied her. Not because she asked, but because she didn't yet understand the layers of what she'd inherited. No, I said finally, but you'll feel it. A gust passed through the window screen, fluttering the post-it I'd stuck to the cabinet. Covenant final copy. I turned it over. On the back was a note Gerald once scribbled, a reminder to himself. Verify. Parcel B December 2003. I exhaled like I'd been punched in the lungs. Of course he'd known. Of course he'd flagged it. But flags only work when someone looks. Ava sat at the kitchen stool, eyes scanning my face. You okay? I shook my head, but not in sorrow. In recalibration. No surprises, I said quietly. Not anymore. The kettle clicked off. Neither of us moved to pour. I stood there, still, the vase behind me, the phone in front, and history rumbling under the floor like a train that forgot it wasn't supposed to return. Then, Ava whispered, what now? Titles look clean on paper, but they're always dragging something behind them. At 10:47 p.m., Harold parked beside the east gate, headlights off. He entered through the side door, coat still smelling faintly of courthouse varnish and black coffee. We didn't greet each other. We didn't need to. The study lamp cast a small island of light across the desk. The same desk where Gerald once taught Ava to spell her last name in cursive, like lineage could be written into muscle memory. Tonight, we were here to unbury a ghost. County Registrar Archives, Harold said, laying out a manila folder. Nothing digital this far back. We sifted one yellowed sheet at a time. My fingertips grew dusty, then numb. Property tax charts, water district bills, parcel sketches like ancient maps. And there it was. Parcel B29, misfiled under inactive, but active enough to haunt us. A single stamp in the upper right corner, unresolved -2003. My throat clenched. The paper wasn't torn, but something in me split. Harold leaned in. Clerical oversight. They failed to cancel the lien after the reassessment. It shouldn't exist anymore, but technically it does. I stared at the page. Flash. Gerald, standing at the old map table, voice low but stern, double-check the county filing. Margaret, don't trust the summary. And I hadn't, but I'd let someone else do the checking. I took the file from Harold, grabbed a red pen, and circled the stamp like it was a wound. I refused to let scab. By 3:02 a.m., the re-release form was filled, notarized, and uploaded to the recorder's overnight drop. At 3:17, I took out the old lien notice, pressed it to the study blotter, and stamped it. Void. The red ink bled slightly into the paper, like history finally admitted it was wrong. Harold exhaled. No further roadblocks, he said. Your covenant stands. I nodded. Didn. Single quotes. Thank him. Just stared at the stamp. It felt heavier than any gavel. Ava didn't wake, or if she did, she didn't come down. She hadn't earned this part. This was legacy work, the kind that happens while others sleep. By 4:11, Harold was gone. By 4:39, I had cleaned the study, returned every file to its place, wiped the desk twice. And then I stood at the window. The vase of tulips had tipped slightly during the night, water beading at the lip. They hadn't bloomed, they'd curled. I straightened the stems, not out of hope, out of habit. When dawn finally cracked the horizon, I didn't move, just stood there. The house didn't feel safe, but it felt sorted. The burden didn't disappear, but it shifted from me to us. I signed away a ghost at sunrise. The clerk at the county office barely glanced up when Harold and I stepped in, papers in hand, adrenaline still lingering like wine in the back of the throat. The building smelled like old ink and tired decisions, a place where families unraveled in file folders and line items. I handed over the release form. She stamped it. The click was anticlimactic, but it echoed like a bell rung after war. Lien cleared, she said, and just like that, a 20-year shadow unhooked itself from my name. We drove to the corner diner not to celebrate, but to acknowledge. 2 black coffees, no cream, no toast. Harold raised his cup like it was communion. To paperwork, he said. To peace, I answered. That sip burned good. When I got back to the car, the air had changed. Not the temperature, the texture. I turned the key. The engine choked, sputtered, then died. At the estate gate. Of course, I stepped out. The front tire had slumped flat and final, and I laughed quietly, bitterly, because legacy had a sense of humor. I leaned against the hood, arms crossed, eyes on the wrought iron archway that bore our family crest, the symbol Ava used to trace in the dust as a child, like it meant something permanent. Now it looked like a dare. My phone buzzed. I didn't even need to text. Harold showed up 20 minutes later with a spare and a crowbar like he'd done it a dozen times. Maybe he had. He knelt by the rim, coat still smelling of courthouse. I should have taught Ava this, I said. Teach her now, he muttered, unscrewing the bolts. While she's still here. I didn't reply, just watched his hands work steady, practiced. There are friendships that announce themselves with champagne, and then there are the ones that just show up, jack in hand. No questions. Once the tire was on, Harold tapped the hood. You're good. I didn't thank him, but I looked him in the eye for the first time in weeks. Something passed between us, respect, maybe or exhaustion. He drove off. No waves, no rearview glances, just gone, like this was always part of his role, not his reward. Slipped behind the wheel, turned the key. The engine hummed, not strong, but willing. I guided the car through the gate. The gravel crunched beneath me, loud in the quiet, and I whispered, almost to the trees. Even stone walls need support. The house rose ahead, unchanged, but not untouched. I eased the car forward, the estate swallowing me whole again. But this time, I wasn't dragging the past behind me. I was driving it forward. Some partnerships don't begin with trust. They begin with necessity, and get seasoned by history. Rosa Delgado never smiled unless she meant it. Retired detective widow, 2 sons, both military. She lived for lots down in a stone house with iron numbers, and for 20 years, we'd passed each other in grocery aisles with nods that meant, I see you, but I won't intrude. Today, I intruded. I knocked, explained, asked. She didn't ask why I needed nightly patrols, just said, I'll bring the good flashlight. That night, she arrived at 6:02 p.m. in boots and a jacket that looked like it could stop bullets. Some people wear strength. She carried it like a ledger. Ava was already back. Not visiting. Moved in. No announcement. Just a suitcase near the stairs and a coffee mug in the sink that didn't belong to me. It said plant lady in fading script. When I raised an eyebrow, she said, you asked for presents. I'm here. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like the house would collapse in my sleep. Harold faxed over the non-contest documents at dusk. 4 pages of legal firewalls. I initialed every one without pause. Send copies to Leonard and Bethany, I said. Let's see if they bark when they realize the bone's gone. He chuckled. That was new, the sound of it in this house. By 8:17. I found myself on the front porch with a wool blanket and half a glass of wine. I wasn't sure I even liked Dot inside. Ava played something quiet on the record player. Ella Fitzgerald, maybe. Rosa walked the perimeter. I could see her flashlight weaving through trees like a patient lighthouse. I didn't know what we were guarding exactly. Paper, memory, the illusion of control. But I knew this. I wasn't guarding it alone. Ava stepped out a moment later, holding an envelope. The bakery left this. Said they overcharged you for the lemon bars last week. Small, silly, unimportant. And I cried, not loudly, not performative lie. Just leaked. A slow, steady salt I didn't wipe away. She stood next to me. Didn't say anything. Didn't have to. The house didn't feel like mine. It felt like ours for the first time since Gerald died at las 9:42. Rosa radioed in. Movement, West Wing. My chest went still, not panic focus. I reached for the drawer by the front door and pulled out the iron ring of keys Gerald always said was ceremonial, but still worked. Locked the side door, then the back, checked the window latches. One by one. Eva followed me without question. When I turned around, she handed me the flashlight. No words, no fear, just readiness. And that, somehow, was louder than any apology. Back at the front hall, I turned off the porch light. Watched from behind the curtains, and there it was. A figure, too far to make out, but tall, moving with deliberation. Not a jogger, not a neighbor. But not fast enough to breach. Rosa's flashlight caught the hem of a coat. The figure turned, walked away, not ran. Walked. And the crunch of the leaves beneath his boots, slow, measured, reminded me that threat doesn't always knock. Sometimes it paces, waits. Tests your gates. I locked the last bolt and whispered, more to myself than anyone else, we defend, together. Then, silence, and the smell of mint from Ava's tea behind me. Hope smells like primer and drywall dust. And sometimes, it costs $8,000 more than you planned. The brush in my hand trembled slightly as I painted over a cracked patch near the dining room arch. The same arch Ava used to run through with fairy wings taped to her back. The plaster flaked like old memories. I'd thought the worst was behind us. Then the contractor cleared his throat. There's rot, Mrs. Halbridge, under the western sill. Been spreading quiet for years. Might have started when the gutter backed up during that old winter storm. The one Gerald forgot to file the claim for. Of course. He tapped the wall with a flat screwdriver. It sounded hollow, sick. His estimate was brief. $8,250, give or take. I stared at the number, then at the baseboard that had fooled me with its neatness. Paint hides things, so does dignity. I nodded once, firm, then faltered. I'll get back to you by Friday. When he left, I stayed in the foyer, hands sticky with paint, eyes on the ledger, open across the hallway bench. The numbers stared back like a second opinion. I couldn't afford this all at once, not without letting something else slide. The roof, the security system. I sat down hard, didn't cry, didn't sigh. Just stilled. Felt the ledger's weight beside me, like an old debt collector, breathing down my shoulder. Then I called the contractor back. Phase it, 2 parts. I'll pay weekly, on time. There was a pause on the other end. Then, fair enough, ma'am. When I hung up, the house felt a fraction heavier, like it knew it owed me now. At noon, Ava walked in with a brown paper bag, and grease on her jeans. Came from the truck stop diner. They still make the chili like Grandma used to. I raised an eyebrow. They also threw in cornbread. No charge. Said you're the matriarch with the eyes. That made me laugh, hard and sudden. I hadn't known I'd needed to. We sat on the back porch steps, chili between us. A.B. circled the rim of my mug. Neither of us moved to shoo it. The contractor's men resumed, scraping in the distance. Nails yanked from wood. Saws yawning. I watched the fresh coat of paint on the north wall, catching light. It gleamed unevenly, but honestly. Ava leaned her head against the doorframe. It's starting to feel like home again. Not yet, I said. But it's trying. Later, after she returned to her work upstairs, I opened the ledger again. Flipped to the last, used page. The columns were tight, marked in blue ink. Groceries, paint, locksmith, insurance. And now, structural repairs. Phase 1. I clicked. My pen, wrote it down, circled it, then closed the cover and ran my hand over its leather edge, worn soft by time, but still stitched. That ledger has outlasted 3 laptops, 2 accountants, and 1 marriage, because paper remembers what we can't afford to forget. As the sun dipped past the barn's rooftop, I stood by the open window in the foyer, breathing in the faint scent of sawdust and primer. It didn't smell like decay. It smelled like effort, like reclamation, like the opposite of silence. Betrayal doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it arrives in an envelope-stamped request for verification. The county seal in the corner was enough to stop my breath halfway to the kettle. Inside, a polite but firm notice. The auditor needed proof the lien had been formally dissolved, proof I already had, but that wasn't what made my pulse skitter. That was the footnote, the afterthought line at the bottom, and documentation of financial stability regarding estate upkeep moving forward. I stood in the kitchen holding it like it was a loaded confession. Then I grabbed my coat, the release form, and my ledger. Harold met me at the bank with the same calm I envied and resented. His tie was slightly crooked. "I didn't fix it, don't worry," he said. I didn't reply, just slid the envelope across the counter to the auditor. He was young, sharp suit, gelled hair, the kind who believed in systems because they'd never failed him. He unfolded the documents like he had all day, the release, the notarized drop sheet, my signature, my initials, looks in order, he said after 30 seconds. I could have collapsed, but I didn't, because then came the second ask. "Funding, ma'am. We've had prior complaints about mismanaged properties in this district. Just a formality. Proof of capacity for repairs." My grip on the ledger stiffened. I opened it, page by page. Each one labeled, itemized, categorized: paint, wood, locksmith, insurance, contractor payments, phase 1. His eyes moved faster now. "And the account itself?" he asked. Harold stepped forward, slid a printed balance across the table. "It was enough, barely, but enough, barely, but enough." The man nodded. "All clear." He stood, offered his hand. I didn't shake it. Instead, I clutched the ledger to my chest like a borrowed heart. We left without speaking. In the car, Harold broke the silence. "You okay?" "No," I said, "but I'm done proving." We pulled into the driveway, and I sat there for a full minute before opening the door. The porch light flickered once, not out, just unsure. I stepped inside. Ava was setting the table. 2 mugs, a teapot. "Figured you'd want calm," she said. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. Instead, she pulled the cornbread from the tinfoil and placed it on the little glass plate with the etched rim, the one we used for birthdays and forgiveness. I sat down, quiet, wrapped in too many layers and not enough warmth. She poured the tea. Mint, again, and for a full 5 minutes, we said nothing, not a single word, but I felt it shift, like plates tectonic under skin. Something had passed. She reached into her bag and placed a small envelope next to my tea. Her own ledger, less formal, a handwritten breakdown of expenses she was covering: groceries, utilities, half the security updates. "I want in," she said. Not a request, a restoration. I didn't cry. I just traced my thumb along the etched edge of the birthday plate. And finally whispered, "Okay." Later, I stepped out into the courtyard. The sky had settled into that bruised blue before full dark. The rosemary bush was beginning to recover, half scorched from the frost, half stubborn enough to bloom again. I stood in its shadow, in my shadow, and said aloud, not to anyone, not quite, "Now we heal." The house used to echo. Now it hummed, not from music, but from voices layered, familiar, imperfect, like laughter had finally learned the blueprint. I hosted the gathering like a woman testing a theory that walls could remember, and maybe even forgive. Rosa brought lemon tarts, half of them missing by the time she made it through the door. Harold arrived in a sweater I hadn't seen before, navy, with elbows that suggested someone else's hands had mended them. Dana set out folding chairs without being asked. Ava lit candles, the tall kind we used for power outages, now serving ambience, and I stood there, in the middle of it, alive, inside a space that had once hollowed me. Then came the keys, small, silver, 5 teeth on each. They didn't jingle. They thudded in my hand like the heartbeat of trust. I held them up. Ava raised her eyebrows. "Come here," I said. She crossed the room. I didn't say anything else, just placed them in her palm. She blinked once, twice. "You're sure?" I nodded. I'm not giving you space. I'm acknowledging you already took it and earned it. Her mouth trembled, not from sadness, from certainty finally received. The keys disappeared into her coat pocket, but I felt the weight stay with me. We moved into the parlor. Family photos lined the walls, again, freshly framed, less staged, one of Dana in overalls and a crooked ponytail, another of Gerald, squinting at the camera like light, was a foreign language dot. No one asked to remove him. That was new. Conversations started without caution. Rosa told a joke. Dana laughed. Harold topped off glasses with something fizzy and not too sweet, and I let it happen. My phone buzzed once, then again, then stilled. Old texts from old critics, ones who'd once called me impulsive, too stubborn, too attached. I didn't open them, didn't delete them either. I just turned the phone screen down on the window ledge and walked away, toward the warmth. Ava had cued Ella Fitzgerald on the old stereo, the same vinyl we played the night the figure paced the West Wing, and this time, I heard lyrics instead of threat. I raised my glass. To home, I said, and to heart. Chairs scraped, glasses lifted. No one corrected me. No one added a speech. They just drank. For the first time in months, maybe years, the doors stayed open, letting air move through, letting rooms speak to each other. No locked corners, no bolted shadows. At one point, I caught Dana staring at a photo of our mother, the one in the yellow apron, holding a pie with one glove off. I forgot how short she was, Dana said. I just smiled, because that wasn't what she meant. Later, after the guests filtered out and the dishes dried without fanfare, I stood alone in the entryway. The keys were back in their hook by the door, except one, the one Ava kept, and for once, the empty hook didn't feel like something missing. It felt like proof of return, of inclusion, of trust that stayed. I didn't need to say anything aloud. The house had heard enough, but I did whisper, soft as paint drying on a sunny sill, we don't shut things out anymore. The front door creaked slightly on its hinge, still ajar, and the wind moved through like it was invited. I never thought I'd host another gala. Not after the last one ended in silence and cold plates. But grief teaches reinvention. And tonight, under golden strings of borrowed lights, I walked barefoot across the lawn, where Gerald once promised forever with a ring that later paid for insulation. That the irony didn't bite, it softened. The air was warm, the estate full, tables pressed with food, laughter unforced. I watched Ava standing tall in a navy dress that matched my late mother's eyes. Around her neck, the Halbridge pendant, our family crest, it used to hang in my closet, too heavy with history. Now, it gleamed against her collarbone, not inherited, but offered. She caught my eye, and for once, didn't look away. The speeches were short, intentional. I kept mine even shorter. This lawn has seen storms, I said, lifting my glass. Tonight, it sees healing. Rosa and Harold clasped hands near the trellis. Their friendship, once forged over crisis radios and nighttime walks, now anchored in rhythm and rosemary tea. Children laughed on the grass, not ours, but welcome. Their joy zigzagged through the crowd like proof that pain doesn't stain everything. Later, I slipped away, up the stairs, past the drawing room, onto the west balcony. The sunset spilled across the fields like honey over scars. Below, the gala pulsed with music and memory. I held the new plaque in my hands, brass, hand-etched, weighty, the Lane legacy. It read, "No surname, no title, just truth." I knelt, pressed it against the stone post beside the front door, drilled it in myself. 3 screws, no ceremony, just permanence. Then I sat, not to rest, to witness, the hum of conversations below, the breeze lifting the edges of tablecloths, someone refilling wine, someone else chasing a balloon through grass. I didn't feel responsible. I felt ready. Behind me, the hallway was dim but not cold. Beside me, the plaque caught the final rays and glowed. Ava joined me moments later. No words, just sat. We didn't need to say it. That the door would stay open. That the home we fought for was no longer a fortress, but a flame flickering. Yes, but tended. We sat until the light dimmed, until the sounds turned soft. And when I stood to head back inside, I let my hand rest on the plaque's corner, warm from sun, firm against stone, proof not of ownership, but of choice. Ours. I turned toward the open door and left it that way.